So, King-Ohger episode 4. This episode continues the introductory arc of meeting our brand new rangers, and in episode 4, we're introduced to the Big Lebowski. And he's quite the interesting case of a character. I do love the energy that this actor brings to him because he's a lot of fun. He's very over-dramatic, and I even loved his little cry that he does, his fake cry, because you can't tell if he's crying or he's laughing. I mean, he's almost laughing like a One Piece character in a way. But not only that, even when he fights, when he morphs near the end of the episode, he sort of moves like a kabuki player with his swordplay, which is really interesting to note. Like, he does all these cool poses when he enters the battle, which is something that I found to be really freaking cool, I will say that. But let's talk about this episode, because it's quite the interesting case, and it had me lost in a few points here and there, so hopefully I can recap and review this episode without missing any important details. So the episode picks up where we last left off at, where Shu Kabuto, God Kabuto, whatever you want to call it, was attacking our heroes. And I gotta say, I love it when you got to have God Kuwagata and God Kabuto fighting each other, because it's sort of like how actual bugs square off at each other, with them using their pincers and sort of them sort of hugging each other and sort of throwing each other back. That was something really cool as well. Like, I didn't mention it in my episode 3 review, but there's this one scene where the Mantis and Kuwagata are sort of like squaring off with each other in the episode, and sort of here we sort of see them fighting again. But not only that, we also have this really cool moment where they form into the mech, like just like that. They don't do the mech transformation sequence, they form into it really quickly to defend themselves. That was a really cool scene. But in the fight, they get blown all the way back into the Tofu Kingdom that Lebowski owns, and somehow Sebastian's there, and Himino brought him along, which was kind of funny because she's getting carried in like sort of like a little pulley thing, which was kind of funny. But not only that, you've got Yama saying, "What is he doing here?" So I like that as well. But like I said, we're introduced to sort of Lebowski. I say sort of, we are introduced to Lebowski in this episode, but we're introduced to Lebowski, and he's sort of like the spin master and the master of deceit and lies, where he is a lot older, so he has that sort of able sort of, I want to say, experience as a king and sort of dealing with other adults, how he can sort of manipulate the whole situation, because he like sort of lies to Gira saying, "Oh, we've been invaded by Hercules, he has this rule over me, I need your help, you're the hero we deserve." So he plays it up and sort of makes Gira sort of join in and help. But also in the episode, we see the bug people, Bugnarok, coming in, and they start invading the land, and they're like, "If you don't hand over that Kabuto, we're gonna burn your village to the ground." And I thought, oh shit, like, we actually might have consequences in this episode, because it was not implied, I was speculating in this episode that God Kabuto wouldn't actually like help out in the end, because Hercules is the one that controls it. And we do get a bit of lore dump from Yama in this episode, saying that God Kabuto was one of the like original deities, 3 deities, which is the scorpion, the grasshopper, and I believe it's the grasshopper because the toys are out now. A scorpion, a grasshopper, and Kabuto. And they were sort of like the main deities, and Hercules has had Kabuto for years. That he's the one that controls it, he's been controlling it, so he's had that in his possession for the longest time. So it makes you wonder, where are the other deities? Because even though like the toys are coming out, we'll probably be seeing them over the next couple of episodes, because that's going to be sort of like the super form for the Zord in the series. So I was thinking that Hercules would actually be keeping God Kabuto in this episode, but with the power of friendship, they somehow win over the God Kabuto, and he ends up joining our heroes. And speaking of Big Lebowski in this episode, I really love his kingdom because it's very old school, like feudal era Japanese, which is like aesthetically really pleasing with how it looks with all the backgrounds and the new technology they're using for the show, because you sort of see all the buildings and how old school they are with their sort of feudal setting. You've got like the giant fields of vegetables and crops that they grow, which is something that the kingdom is proud of. There's this one moment, this really great Gira moment, where he gets offered a potato, I believe, or some kind of vegetable, and he looks at it saying, oh, this one's all muddy and this one's all got bugs crawling out of it. And the lady that offers it to him makes a face, but Gira still eats it anyway. And Dabowski does say, like, the crops are something people are proud of. And I believe he says even if they're covered in dirt and bugs, people still eat them, even though they probably clean them, hopefully. But he does say, like, even though, like, our vegetables go for a lot, it's still something that our people are proud of. Now, the Bugnarok, like I mentioned earlier, show up in this episode as well. We get a really cool fight scene with Yama and Himeno against the grunts, and that was really freaking cool of how it was filmed, where they were jumping over them and doing some really cool sword play. That's the one thing I do like about them using swords and stuff in this series, is we get some really cool evasive maneuvers and sort of jumps and tricks and stuff like that as the characters fight. They show off their fighting style, like I mentioned earlier with Dabowski, where he sort of does all this really cool stuff in his fight scene that really blew me away. But also, like I mentioned, we meet Dabowski in his kingdom, and there's this really funny scene where they're sort of like eating at the table, and because they're bickering and Dabowski is trying to ask for their help, he like throws up the table into the air and like everyone's trying to catch the food, which got a laugh out of me as well. But Dabowski eventually comes around in the episode, and I say that with quotation mark, comes around, where he says that he's going to join Gira's side. But Yama eventually pieces it all together, saying, hey, this whole thing was a ruse, and you never really needed our help after all, because you probably could have handled this yourself. And as he's sort of doing like the heroic handshake to Gira, he won't let go. He's holding on to him really freaking tightly. And what I found really interesting is like no one came to help Gira when he's trying to pull away. He didn't really ask for anyone's help, but when Yama starting to piece it together with everything going on, that's when Rita appears. And Rita has been making these cameo appearances in the different areas for the past couple of episodes. We saw them in episode 3 through the mirror with that like little jump scare, and then we saw Rita in, I believe, Raculi's kingdom looking at all the books, and then they show up at the end of the episode and they're going to take Gira to their kingdom to face execution and be put on trial. Or put on trial and see if they will face execution, because Gira is an international wanted criminal, and that means he could face several charges. But no doubt about it, those charges are going to get dropped with the next episode's preview, because we get a big group shot with all of them at the end of the episode, which I am curious to see what the show's gonna do once all 5 of these characters are reunited. Are they sort of gonna jump between all the different kingdoms and all the different lands and stuff like that? You never really know, but either way, I'm excited to see Rita and what their kingdom's all about, and who they are, because Rita's been the big mysterious one for a lot of people ever since the show was announced. But either way, this episode was really freaking solid. I probably skipped over a lot of things, but this episode was sort of like a big mystery of what's going on with freaking Dabowski and what exactly is he planning. But overall, this episode had some really freaking cool scenes, like the mech fight, where we saw the combination of God Kabuto joining King-Ohger, which is really freaking cool. Now, I've seen the full combination of all of these mechs, and it's kind of a clusterfuck with how it looks, but we'll see what happens in the end. But either way, really great mech fights. Like, they're really unique with what they do with them, and I do like how everyone sort of has their own little control thing in the episode. But again, great episode, solid episode. I'm curious to see where the show is going to go moving forward, especially after episode 5, now that we've kind of have the team put together after we're introduced to all our rangers. But we'll see what happens, But anyway, guys, what did you think of King-Ohger episode 4? If I missed anything, feel free to correct me. I'm totally fine with that, because I probably missed a lot of stuff. But this episode was a little bit difficult to recap and talk about. But Like I said, solid episode, and I really enjoyed it. But what did you guys think of it? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. With that said, I'm out of here. Have a wonderful day or night, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out, take care, bye.
Jingle, jingle, jingle.